We are linking these Thursday evenings with a Saturday morning course that we're running called the 6-week meditation challenge. We're following up themes from that course. You can join us on these Thursdays and on Monday mornings, even if you're not on the 6-week challenge course. And you can take part in the challenge. You can accept the challenge, which is to meditate for 5 days a week for 6 weeks, and we'll support that as best we can. That's why we're running 3 things a week to support this challenge. And this week's theme is Metta. Metta is a loving, friendly intention, a well-wishing towards ourselves and all beings. And tonight's practice is the Metta Bhavana. Metta Bhavana means cultivation of metta. We're cultivating this well-wishing in our meditation tonight. If you haven't done the practice before, don't worry. Or if you're new to meditation completely, again, it shouldn't be a problem. I will do my level best to make sure that you are able to follow the practice. So I'll lead us through in some detail when we come to the meditation. Before we do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about why we do this practice, and I'm also going to define metta. I hope a little more clearly. I'm going to talk about it more anyway. Hopefully that will make it clearer. And I'm going to suggest some different ways we might approach this practice, Metta Bhavana practice, and actually try some of them out in our practice, in our sit tonight. After we've had a chat, as I said, there'll be an opportunity for any questions, any comments that you have, and I'll do my best to respond to them. We finish at 8 o'clock. Why do we do it then? Why do we do the Metta Bhavana? Why do we cultivate this loving kindness, this friendly intention towards ourselves and others? This is the simplest question, I think, of the night. We do it to become more loving, more friendly to ourselves and others. And it might sound a bit cozy and cuddly, being friendly with ourselves, and it can be a lovely warm practice, and it isn't always pleasant, because we're actually trying to change ourselves. We're cultivating a response to the world that is mettaful, a response to ourselves which is mettaful. So we are changing, transforming ourselves. We are growing, and as we know, growth can sometimes be painful. Yeah. So, if you have a less than pleasant experience in Metta Bhavana, or any meditation like that, doesn't mean that it's gone wrong. It just means you might be very usefully challenging yourselves to change in some way. I was reflecting the other day upon particle physics, like you do, and I realised it's been going on for quite a long time. It's about 60, 70 years now that physicists have been looking for these increasingly small particles, these subatomic particles. And it's bizarre, they don't exist in a way until they're sensed by some piece of equipment. They exist in theory, in the physicists' minds, until they find them and it catches up with the theory. So you may remember the Higgs boson particle and the Large Hadron Collider. They're so small, so tenuous, these particles, and yet when they find them, they explain huge facts about the universe, answer these huge questions. And metta is a bit like that. We can't see it or touch it. And it might be quite hard sometimes to find it at all, to make contact with it. And yet it's the key to our development as human beings. And it answers big questions as well. It answers big questions about why we're here, how to live a purposeful life. Huge universal questions. So that's why we do it. Oh, by the way, you don't need to build a large Hadron Collider in your garden to find metta. We are all Metta detectors. And I'm going to move swiftly on for that because I can sort of hear a collective groan through the ether. So this is a little bit more difficult. It's describing what metta is, because a friend pointed out to me earlier in the week that we can use jargon if we're not careful. Metta itself is a bit of jargon, isn't it? Because it's a specialized word. And I can use phrases that I've used before and just get in the habit of saying to people, as I have tonight, metta is a loving, friendly intention that we cultivate towards ourselves and others. And that is true. It is an intention. And there's more. There's more to metta. As an intention, then, it's born in the mind. So cultivating metta involves the mind. But even in the mind, it's more than just forming an intention. We often need to use our imagination to connect with metta. A bit like the physicists use their imaginations to connect with these tiny, tiny particles. It also involves the body. When we practice, when we engage with these kind, these loving intentions towards ourselves and others, this can manifest as a joy, and also as a warm feeling. We sometimes get a warm glow around the heart center when we engage with metta. And other emotions can come through as well. I think there's an emotional content to metta, although it isn't, similarly, while it isn't just an intention, it also isn't just an emotion. But I certainly experience joy sometimes when I'm practicing metta. I don't know whether any of you have had this, but at the end of meditation practice, I often, in fact, we'll probably do it tonight, I often let go of any effort right at the end of the practice. And it's often then that I get a sense of deepening and falling further into practice. And with metta, sometimes I get this surge of joyful well-wishing arising. And sometimes that happens outside meditation for me. Sometimes when I'm out in nature, for example, I'll experience this surge of well-wishing and joy, apparently spontaneously. There's one more thing I want to mention about what metta is, and that is that it is, I find it mysterious. There's a mystery about what metta is. For me, something to do with the fact that it is limitless. There's no limit to metta. It's inexhaustible. We are not going to run out of metta. Don't worry about doing that. And it's not my metta, which I find slightly mysterious. Even though I am cultivating it, it doesn't belong to me. So metta involves the mind, the body, the emotions, and this sense of mystery, this flavor of mystery. And while I'm talking about metta, in a way, I'm talking about it as though it is a thing, and it isn't a thing. It's we might be more accurate to think of it as a flow. A flow of metta, a process rather than a static thing. And we are the same, aren't we? We're a process. We're not static. We change, and that's really easy to see over big periods of time. I can either look at photographs or cast my mind back to, I don't know, the me of 10 years ago, and I was very different. I had a different mind. I certainly had a different body 10 years ago. And it happens more frequently than that. And it's not as though we're being updated periodically like a computer program, shutting down for the night and having changed slightly when we wake up. We're changing every year, every month, every day, every week, every hour of every day, every second, every moment. We are changing. We too are a flow. We're a sort of continual state of flux from moment to moment. Given then that Metta is changing, is alive in a way, that we are changing, our practice needs to, I think, respond to these potential changes. So we need to engage our minds, our bodies, our emotions, perhaps this sense of mystery, all of those in our meditation, so we can respond to what we find, respond to what's present. I'm going to try and introduce all those things into our sit tonight. And I'm not suggesting that you need to do this all the time in your practice. It might be better to stick with one thing at a time. I just want to see how these different ways of working with Metta land with us tonight. And it may be that we're able to go away with something to try out another time. In case we need reminding, or we haven't done the practice before, I'll just say a little bit about the shape of the Metta Bhava. It's a 5-stage practice, and in each stage we cultivate well-wishing, cultivate metta towards different people or groups of people. So we start with ourselves. Don't worry, I'll remind you of these stages as we go through them. Start with ourselves, then we move in the second stage onto a friend. Third stage is a neutral person, somebody we don't feel particularly strongly about one way or the other. The fourth stage, traditionally it's known as the enemy. It's somebody where there's some sort of difficulty between us. Needs to be somebody you have a relationship of some description with. So it can't be a sort of two-dimensional villain from somewhere on the news, because there are a few of those about. Needs to be somebody you're actually in contact with. And if you have an arch enemy, if you have somebody that where this feeling is really strong, the antipathy is very strong, then perhaps don't choose them to start with. Maybe moving towards really, people you find really, really difficult, but starting with somebody where it's a little easier to sort of cultivate well-wishing towards. So as we settle towards our practice, just giving a little bit of thought to who you're going to bring along with you tonight in your meditation practice. So a friend, a neutral person, somebody you don't feel particularly strongly about, negatively or positively, and somebody where there's a bit of difficulty between you. Last stage is a 5-stage practice. The last stage, we just expand out. In a way, we expand, and the metta expands to include more and more beings. Great. So we'll have a sit together now. So making yourselves comfortable, getting into a meditation posture. If you're not used to that, I'll say a little bit about that as we settle down. Really important, I think, to treat ourselves in a way that's congruent with the practice. So being gentle and kind to ourselves as we settle down to meditate. So looking after ourselves, making ourselves comfortable, warm. And we're going to sit for about 25 minutes. So paying some attention to our contact with the ground, with the floor. So if you're on a chair, perhaps making sure that your feet are flatly connected with the floor. It's often best not to have our legs crossed if we start on the chair. We'll end up getting pins and needles, and we might feel less connected with the earth, with the ground. And the same goes for our bottoms. Not crossing them, but making sure that they are connected with our cushions or our seats, whatever we're sitting on. And if we work towards having a stable connection with the ground through our lower body, we may well find that that gives us a really good support for the upper body. So the back will rise from the pelvic structure, nice and upright, not held really straight, just allowing the back to follow its natural curves. It's useful, it's important to make sure that the hands are supported in some way, just to make sure that they're not dragging our shoulders down. So having the hands on the thighs or in the lap, or maybe tucked into a blanket if you have a blanket around you. And closing your eyes if you'd like to do that. Getting a sense of settling and arriving perhaps more fully on your cushion or chair. And we can begin to notice those aspects of our experience that we're going to turn towards in this practice. Starting with our bodies, what can we feel? Moving from thinking to feeling what's happening. We may choose just to notice whatever is prominent in our physical experience. Or you may want to scan briefly through the body. And if you find nothing in particular, that's okay. It's okay. We can pay a little more attention to parts of the body where there's often sensation apparent. So the feet, we can often find sensations of warmth or cold in the feet, or the contact between the feet and the ground, sensation there. And we can do the same with our bottoms, contact with the seat or the cushion, the sensation there. And the hands, of course, lots of nerve endings in the fingers. You may be able to notice whatever the hands are touching, the pressure between the hands and the lap or the legs or the blanket. Noticing any emotions that are present. Anything we can name, any emotions like I'm feeling just a little bit excited at the moment, a little bit fizzy. And it might be that you can't notice anything in particular, but perhaps can get a general sense of our overall emotional tone, so whether you're up or down or somewhere in the middle. Whatever we find, approaching that in a friendly manner. Accepting what's there, we're not trying to change anything. and our minds, any thoughts that are present. And if thoughts arise, we can just let them be there. We can let thoughts be thoughts. We don't need to get caught up in them. A general sense of being here, perhaps more readily connected now with our experience, our minds, our bodies, our emotions. The Metta Bhavana, the cultivation of a loving, friendly intention towards ourselves and others. We start with ourselves. We bring all of ourselves to mind as much as we can. We are more than the bit that sits at the top of our consciousness, more than that, which we often identify that as me or I. But there's much more than that present. Maybe we'll have to imagine some of the depths. But we know there's quite a lot under the surface. And forming an intention to wish all of us well. Metta is already there for ourselves. We do wish ourselves well. It may not be readily apparent or present for us, that metta. Perhaps we can imagine it as a spark or a seed. Allowing that seed of metta to grow, or the spark to catch and spread. Nurturing what we find. Checking on any bodily response, so any warmth, particularly around the heart. If we find warmth, we can allow it to expand, to grow. And noticing any emotional response, how we're feeling. As we move into the second stage of the practice, maintaining a sense of any metta, any well-wishing that's already present. remembering that it isn't ours, it doesn't belong to us, although we have cultivated it towards ourselves, including our friend in that metta. Bringing our friend fully to mind, as best we can. An image, a happy memory. Particularly at this time, we may not have seen friends for a while, certainly in person. We might like to imagine our next meeting. Wishing our friend well. Noticing what's going on in terms of any physical or emotional response. Sometimes enough just to bring our friends to mind can result in sensations of warmth and friendliness. Nurturing any warmth, nurturing any metta towards our friend. In the third stage of our practice, again, staying in touch, if we can, with the well-wishing already cultivated, the metta already present. Inviting the neutral person into this metta. So we may have to use more imagination to bring this person fully to mind. We may not know a lot about them. We can, though, imagine with some confidence that they wish themselves to be well and to be happy, to love and to be loved. And at this time, we can imagine they may be anxious for themselves, their friends, their family. Wishing them well. Looking for and allowing any seeds, any sparks of well-wishing to grow. Checking once again for any physical response, any emotional response. The fourth stage, the person where there is a difficulty between you. We stay in touch with any metta already present. Bringing this person to mind. Bringing the metta to them. It may be that whatever the difficulty is, as you bring this person to mind, that may be the most prominent thing present for you. And that's okay. We're not aiming to deny the difficulty, rather to bring well-wishing to the whole person. There's much more to them than whatever the difficulty is. So you may be aware of more aspects of their life, or you may not. And if so, you may, just as with the neutral person, may usefully use the imagination to connect with the bigger them, knowing that they will share with us a wish to be well and happy, to be loved, to love. So the metta is unlimited, unconditional, not conditional upon whether you like this person or not. We can still wish them well. Finding the seeds of metta that are there already. The spark. Cherishing this and allowing it to grow, to expand. Noticing any physical or emotional response, any warmth. So the final stage of our practice, best we can, fully connecting with the metta for ourselves, friend, the neutral person, the person where there is a difficulty. Equalizing the metta towards all these individuals. It's the same metta. It's unlimited, unconditional. The same well-wishing towards our friend, ourselves, the neutral person, and the person where there is a difficulty between you. allowing the metta to grow, to expand, nurturing the growth of this well-wishing. Periodically checking for any physical response, any warmth, any emotional response. Including now all the people with us here meditating. Our families, our friends. Our particular villages, towns or cities, all the beings in these places. Expanding further and further. As far as your imagination will allow the metta to expand, to touch more and more beings. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. And for the last minute or so of the meditation, before I ring the bell to mark the end of the practice, letting go of any effort. Just sitting. Nothing to do. So again, in congruence with the practice, gently, kindly, opening your eyes when you're ready, letting go of the practice very gently. Now we have a little bit of time for any questions or comments that you have. Please feel free to post them on the comments or the chat section on YouTube, and they'll be relayed to me, and I'll try and respond.
I noticed myself, Dharmanatha, that when we just, I can't remember how you put it, but at the end of the practice where we just stop making any effort there was a sense of peace, and it had a quality of sort of tenderness and even a slight expansiveness to that. It was what I most noticed about that meditation, but at the end.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Well, it's not funny, but I'd find it amusing. Maybe it's my sense of humour that I think it may be a function of the effort we've been making. I sometimes don't realise that I've been holding on to something just a little effortfully and tight. It's not until I let go that I notice, oh yeah, that's I can let go a bit. Yeah, and I think actually in subsequent weeks we may be working with that, specifically that. Yeah, being more sort of more receptive rather than more active. Thank you.
Carrie has written, please could you say a bit more about why the metta is not our own if it's happening in our minds? Yeah,
I could. I don't know whether I'd make any more sense than I did previously. Thanks for that, Carrie. I think it was a personal reflection in terms of how I find metta. I just find that there's something mysterious about it. And it doesn't feel like mine. In a way, it doesn't feel, because it's unlimited, it feels as though it is, it's shared more widely. Yeah. I'm sorry I can't be clearer about that. Maybe I should give it more thought, but it is, it's a bit of a cop-out, but it's a mystery. I often run up against things and I'm happy to accept, for the time being anyway, that's a bit mysterious, and it may open up for me subsequently. Yeah, thanks for the question. I've got no idea whether that made any sense or not to you. Yeah, but it's not unusual for us to run up against things like this in meditation and in Buddhism in general. These slightly mysterious ways of being.
There's some appreciation for your insight into metta that you've provided and particle physics.
I'm not sure about the. I think I told you everything I know about particle physics. Yeah, we do have, though. I can make a recommendation. Our president of Cambridge Buddhist Centre is a man called Jnanavacha, who's a trained physicist, and he gives fascinating talks on this crossover between Buddhism, meditation, and particle and quantum physics. Yeah,